you like me to quote you? Ironically, the thing that people are the most hungry for, meaning, is the one thing that science hasn't been able to give them.
Yeah.
Come on, it's like you're saying that science killed God. What if science simply revealed that he never existed in the first place?
When it comes to religion, I have an agenda. In short, I believe that it is time for humanity to transition from its long turbulent adolescence, where we have steeped ourselves in notions of being self-important, to adopt a more mature and self-aware understanding of our true place in the universe as revealed by science. It is time that we acknowledge that we are both a part and a product of the universe and its natural laws, not a special or supernatural creation within it. There is a term that recognizes that humanity is an integral part of the cosmos without any need for magical outside intervention. And that term is Scientific Pantheism. Now, if you are like me, upon first hearing the term pantheism, you immediately think I might be talking about some kind of hippy-dippy mysticism akin to supernatural paganism or nature worship or Wiccan witchcraft or some such thing. I am not. When I sometimes refer to myself as being a pantheist, I really have just one central belief, and that belief is simply, the universe is God. Or if you prefer, you can interchange the terms and say, God is the universe. Indeed, I would say it is acceptable that under a pantheist definition, the term God is simply a metaphor for the cosmos, the universe, or the totality of all reality. Everything that is knowable or can be experienced via our senses or via our scientific instruments would qualify as an aspect of God. Everything from the stars in the sky to the neurons comprising your brain, from the oxygen molecules that fill your lungs to the warmth of the sun on your skin, from the laws of physics that govern all existence to the taxonomies of being that catalog all life. All of these are elements of reality and hence facets of God. Now, if you've watched some of my other videos, for example, my response to Black Pigeon Speaks video, Atheism is Vacuous Grandiloquence, you probably get the sense that I would have defined myself as an atheist. And to be fair, I will often wear that label because of its value as a contrast to a belief in a personal revelatory God as you see in Christianity or Islam. But the atheism level always kind of chafes me a little bit because it carries with it a lot of negative connotations. You probably know what I'm talking about. When you refer to yourself as an atheist, especially in the presence of a religious believer, you almost immediately face accusations of how can you possibly know that God does not exist? What hubris, they say. What arrogance. Which then means you have to go down the rabbit hole of explaining the burden of proof. That really atheists aren't saying that we know God doesn't exist, only that we find the evidence for the most commonly defined aspects of his alleged existence as outlined in the world's major religions not to be compelling enough to grant our belief. And then there's that difference between weak atheism, which acknowledges the possibility of God's existence but doesn't see sufficient proof, and strong atheism, which sees the very concept of God as being so illogical and unintelligible as to be impossible. And so on, and so on. How exhausting. Oh, and then there's the other problem that true believers will gallop into the territory that atheism is invariably linked to nihilism, and that atheists have no grounding for morality or purpose. And all atheists are doing is tearing down the foundations of civilization and leaving an awful vacuum in its space. And that atheism is just a religion based around the worship of nothingness. And again, as the token atheist, you end up having to explain that morality and religion aren't as closely linked as religious people may think they are. That atheists can be just as moral and purpose-driven as any religious believers, if not more so, because they are doing things with an understanding of action and consequence, rather than out of strict obedience to dogma and the vain hope for an imaginary post-death reward in heaven or an eternal fiery punishment in hell. And so on, again How exhausting. Ah, but now think about what happens if you refer to yourself as a pantheist. Most religious people will respond with a kind of quizzical look and say, well, what is that? And then you reply with your handy-dandy one-sentence description, it's just the acknowledgement that the universe is God. Now then, most believers won't generally know quite what to make of that. Essentially, you've just positioned yourself as aligned with a non-religious view, but instead of emphasizing the negative as to what it is that you don't believe, you've put things in terms of what it is that you do believe. Now, to some people, this just seems like a trick of semantics. In fact, in the first chapter of his book, The God Delusion, Richard Dawkins calls pantheism simply sexed up atheism. He notes that some famous scientists, such as Albert Einstein and Stephen Hawking, qualify as scientific pantheists because these scientists have used the term God as a sort of poetic metaphor for the universe or the underlying laws of nature. Dawkins then goes on to criticize this by saying, the metaphorical or pantheistic God of the physicists is light years away from the interventionist, miracle-wreaking, thought-reading, sin-punishing, prayer-answering God of the Bible, of priests, mullahs, and rabbis, and of ordinary language. Deliberately to confuse the two is, in my opinion, an act of intellectual high treason. I, however, disagree with Dawkins in this. I think that the value comes not in contrasting the pantheistic worldview against religion as though it were something contrary, but rather in advocating for it as an alternative. In other words, my position is that there is pragmatic utility in defining yourself as a pantheist when engaging in religious discussions. It gives you the ability to have a productive conversation without needing to waste time wading through some of the quagmires associated with atheism. Furthermore, and I think perhaps even more compelling, it allows you to position your pantheistic worldview not as antagonistic to religion, but rather as a genuine alternative that can be argued to be demonstrably superior. With a little cleverness, you can make a strong case that pantheism subsumes the primitive religions of the past and represents the culmination of religious belief. Pantheism is what the religions of antiquity have aspired to be, whereas atheism carries with it notions of negativity, emptiness, and existential angst. Pantheism offers positivity, richness, and reverence for nature and one's place within it. Now I know that these are some big claims, and as a thinking person, you may be a bit suspicious of them. In fact, I hope that you are. Skepticism is the root of all knowledge. So please allow me to quickly give a few examples of what I like to call the power of pantheism in dealing with some of the religious objections commonly leveled against atheism. First, in pantheism, you can actually prove that your God exists. By making the semantic equivalency between God and the cosmos, you can establish that you don't need any kind of religious faith to accept your primary religious tenet. Not only can you experience God subjectively through your personal senses, but anyone and everyone else can too. Note that the universe and its attendant natural laws fit most of the characteristics traditionally ascribed to the supernatural God. The universe is omnipotent. Nobody is immune to the laws of physics and chemistry. The universe is omnipresent. It exists everywhere. And it is eternal in the sense that the existence of time is linked to its ongoing expansion. So barring some sort of solipsistic counterargument, you can quickly get an edge in most religious discussions. And from there, you can move on into what it means to accept the cosmos as God. Second, pantheism subsumes revelation and scripture via scientific inquiry. In the pantheistic worldview, we can accept that for most of history, humans have been trying to understand how to relate to the universe in which we find ourselves. Our long search in all its multivarious forms is what we have called religion. And the peoples of the past were seeking answers by the best methods they had available to them at the time: tradition, revelation, scripture, introspection, ritual, etc. Of course, now with our modern worldview, we can see that these methods yielded some results, but that they were often incomplete and fraught with all kinds of subjective error. The problem of subjectivity in understanding the cosmos is why we see so many thousands of religions throughout history. Religion was just a lot of different people's subjective opinions about the universe, or God, and what it is. But now with science, we have found a better way, a way that is genuinely objective and universal. Or as Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson says, the good thing about science is that it is true whether or not you believe in it. The law of gravity is the same in the United States as it is in China or Brazil, for example. So, while we can have a degree of respect for the historical search engaged in by religion, in scientific pantheism, we can now seek to better understand our place in the universe via our better tools. Third, the fruits of pantheism are truly miraculous. You can make the argument that, as our understanding of the universe has improved, it has in return rewarded us with truly miraculous powers that the false gods of antiquity can't even touch. For example, rather than allegedly curing just one person of disease, in some cases, we can demonstrably cure all instances of a disease worldwide. Rather than communicating with just one person, allegedly via, say, a burning bush or an angel, now we can demonstrably communicate with nearly everyone on the planet simultaneously via satellite. Instead of allegedly walking on water, we can demonstrably fly tens of thousands of people safely across entire oceans. Instead of allegedly feeding 5,000 with a few loaves of bread and fishes, we can now demonstrably feed billions upon billions through modern agriculture. And so on. And just think where we're going to be in another couple decades via genetics, robotics, artificial intelligence, and nanotechnology. So the universe may seem pretty hardcore when you don't understand its laws. But when you do, you no longer need any supernatural gods to save you because you can be one yourself. Fourth, and finally for the purposes of this video, pantheism short-circuits presuppositionalist and objective morality arguments. So a common apologist tactic by religious believers is that you need some kind of superlative God as a basis for either knowledge or for morality. You will frequently see this argument dredged up by the likes of someone like William Lane Craig. They will argue that without some kind of objective standard, like their notion of a supernatural lawgiver, you can't possibly call anything moral. Without a man in the sky, morality is all just different people's subjective opinions. Now, as an atheist, this can be a bit of a tricky subject to navigate. However, as a pantheist, you can immediately shut down this line of argumentation simply by saying that your God, the universe itself, is objective and exists independently of any one person. And so, you refer to it as your source for knowledge and for morality. Of course, believers will be puzzled by this, so the next question they'll likely ask is, the universe may exist independently of any one person, but it doesn't talk to you, so how in the world can you derive any sense of knowledge or morality from it? To which you can respond with, well, I'm glad you asked. You see, through the natural laws of the universe, humanity has come into being. The creative process of evolution has equipped us with two very important characteristics. First, it has granted us a capacity for reason that is shared universally in varying degrees by all people. And second, and even more importantly, since humans are social creatures, evolution has also given us moral instincts as to how we should best interact with one another. Our notions of kindness, compassion, justice, fairness, empathy, and so on are all results from the evolutionary process. And from these gifts of the cosmos, we can derive an objective standard of universal human rights. Acting in accordance with those rights provides us with a source for determining moral behavior. Now, in a future video, I plan on going into this idea in more detail, but for now, hopefully you can see my point, that pantheism provides you with a ready-made standard of objectivity as a bulwark against such apologist tactics. So, one last note to wrap all this up. Maybe some of you are thinking, okay, I see what you're doing here, but really it kind of just feels like a trick of language. You're simply equivocating when you say that you accept the universe as God. This pantheism thing is all just one big semantic game. And to that I say, maybe you're right. But aren't most discussions about something as ephemeral as the nature of God really just about semantics anyway? And so is there, perhaps, some pragmatic utility in adopting this position of scientific pantheism, at least when talking to a religious believer? Well, let me know what you think in the comments below. And thank you for watching.